Stop scrolling. Everything you know about trucks is wrong. We aren't talking about Fords or Chevys here. Imagine a truck that looks like a spaceship, another that drives while you stand up, and a military beast that actually swims through rivers. These aren't sci-fi movies. These are real monsters from history that defy every law of physics and logic. Why would anyone build a truck with only 3 wheels, or one that bends in the middle? Today we are exposing 10 of the most bizarre, dangerous, and mind-blowing trucks ever made. You need to watch until the very last second to believe they exist. Hit that subscribe button right now and do not look away, because this ride is about to get extremely weird, and trust me, you are not ready for the 6-wheeled nightmare waiting at number 1. We start our journey in post-war Japan with a vehicle that looks less like a truck and more like a rolling log. Meet the Mazda T2000. When you first look at it, your brain struggles to comprehend the proportions. It is incredibly long, with the longest version stretching over 20 feet in length, yet it balances precariously on just 3 wheels. This wasn't a mistake, it was a necessity. In the tight, narrow streets of recovering Japan, maneuverability was king. The 3-wheel configuration allowed for a much tighter turning radius than any 4-wheeler could dream of, making it the ultimate urban workhorse. Don't let the quirky tricycle look fool you. This machine was an absolute beast in its category. Under the cabin, or rather inside the cabin with you, sat a robust 121 cubic inch, 2.0 liter, water-cooled 4-cylinder engine. This was a significant jump in power compared to its smaller predecessors. The T2000 was the undisputed king of the auto rickshaw class, capable of hauling a payload of roughly 4,400 lbs, 2 tons. It could hit speeds of around 60 mph, which, given that you are balancing on one front wheel, must have felt absolutely terrifying. It was heavy-duty hauling with motorcycle dynamics. Driving the Mazda T2000 was an experience completely unique to this era. The cabin was sparse, loud, and offered zero crash protection, but it provided an unobstructed view of the road because you were sitting directly on top of the front wheel. It represents a specific moment in history where utility completely trumped aesthetics. While they look alien to us now, in the 1960s and early 70s, these blue giants were building the infrastructure of a nation. Today, seeing one is a rare treat, a reminder of when Mazda was building the backbone of industry before they became famous for sports cars. Crossing the Atlantic to the United Kingdom, we find the Scammell Scarab, a vehicle with a name as distinctive as its shape. Developed in 1948, the Scarab was designed to be the successor to the literal horse-drawn carts still used in British rail yards. The engineers needed a mechanical replacement that could maneuver exactly like a horse. The result was this snub-nosed, 3-wheeled tractor unit. With a payload capacity ranging from 6,700 to 13,000 lbs depending on the model, it was a serious industrial tool packaged in a toy-like body, dominating the narrow alleyways of London. The true magic of the Scarab lay in its front wheel configuration. It could rotate a full 360 degrees, allowing the truck to spin within its own length. Imagine the utility of that in a crowded city center. You could practically parallel park it sideways. The cabin was mounted directly over the engine, usually a side-valve gas engine or a Perkins diesel, which meant the driver was intimately acquainted with the heat and noise. It wasn't built for driver comfort. It was built to move freight from trains to local businesses as efficiently as physically possible. What makes the Scarab truly bizarre to modern eyes is its coupling system. It used an innovative automatic coupling gear that allowed the driver to hook up a trailer without ever leaving the cab, a feature that was revolutionary for driver efficiency at the time. Despite its somewhat comical appearance, the Scarab was incredibly durable. Thousands were produced, and they remained in active service well into the 1960s. Watching a Scarab in motion is like watching a dance. It scurries around with an agility that defies its industrial purpose, a brilliantly British solution to a logistical problem. Now we leave the realm of utility and enter the mind of a mad genius. Luigi Colani was not a truck manufacturer. He was a visionary industrial designer who believed that nature held the perfect shapes. He detested the boxy, brick-like shape of modern semi-trucks, arguing that they were aerodynamic disasters that wasted fuel. So, starting in the late 70s, he created a series of concept trucks, most notably the Colani 2001, based on heavy-duty Mercedes-Benz chassis. These weren't just drawings, they were fully functional prototypes that looked like they drove straight off the set of a sci-fi blockbuster. The design is absolutely stunning and shocking. The driver's cabin looks like the cockpit of a fighter jet or the eye of a giant insect. It is circular, featuring a massive round windshield with a rotating three-blade wiper that looks like a propeller. The entire front end is sculpted to slice through the air, claiming to reduce fuel consumption by up to 30% at highway speeds. The driver sat high up in a central position, surrounded by glass, piloting the vehicle more than driving it. It was organic design, bio-design, applied to heavy industry in a way no one had ever dared before. However, despite their futuristic looks and proven aerodynamic efficiency, the industry never adopted them. Why? Because they were impractical for everything else. The bizarre, elongated nose reduced the legal length available for cargo, made engine access a nightmare for mechanics, and was incredibly expensive to manufacture. Trucking companies wanted standardized boxes for maximum profit, not spaceships. Yet, the Colani trucks remain some of the most fascinating vehicles ever seen on a highway. They stand as a testament to what trucking could look like if we prioritized wind resistance over boxy efficiency. Germany in the late 1940s was rebuilding from rubble, and they needed simple, reliable transport. Enter the Tempo Matador. At first glance, the Matador looks somewhat like a Volkswagen bus that is melted in the sun. It has a low, droopy face with headlights that seem to be staring sadly at the ground. But the weirdest part of the Matador isn't its looks, it's the engine. This was one of the very few trucks to use the Volkswagen Beetle's 1100cc, approx 67 cubic inch engine, but it placed it in the front, driving the front wheels. This front-wheel drive, FWD layout was actually a stroke of genius for a utility vehicle. Because there was no driveshaft running to the back wheels, the cargo bed could be extremely low and flat, making it incredibly easy to load heavy goods by hand. With only 25 horsepower on tap, it wasn't going anywhere fast. Top speed was barely 50 mph, but it could carry a surprising amount of weight. It was the perfect delivery vehicle for the narrow cobblestone streets of Europe. However, this success created a rivalry with Volkswagen itself. Volkswagen realized the Tempo Matador was a direct competitor to their own upcoming Type 2 transporter, the VW bus. So they cut off the supply of engines. Tempo was forced to scramble and switch to other engines, primarily Austin motors, which changed the design of the front end. But the original VW-powered Matadors remain the holy grail for collectors. The driving position is bizarrely forward, sitting right over the front axle with a horizontal steering wheel. It looks friendly, harmless, and slightly confused, a fascinating footnote in history where the VW engine almost became the standard for front-wheel drive trucks. If you thought the Mazda T2000 was the only three-wheeler on this list, think again. Germany had its own fascination with the tripod layout, and the Goliath goalie was the last of its kind. Produced by the Borgward Group in the late 1950s, the goalie was a desperate attempt to keep the cheap three-wheeled commercial vehicle alive. Unlike its chain-driven predecessors, the goalie featured a more advanced shaft drive system, sending power to the front wheel. The design is stark, utilitarian, and dangerously simple, looking like a metal box balanced on a tricycle. The goalie was powered by a tiny 30 cubic inch, 500cc, two-cylinder, two-stroke engine. If you know engines, you know that means blue smoke and a very distinct ring-ding-ding noise echoing through the streets. With about 15 horsepower, it had a payload of roughly 2,000 lbs, which is impressive relative to its size, but stability was always a concern. While it was fine for low-speed city deliveries, taking a corner too fast in a fully loaded Goliath goalie was a recipe for a rollover. It was the budget option for the small business owner who couldn't quite afford a four-wheeled van. Despite its limitations, the goalie was surprisingly popular for a short time due to its low cost and tax benefits. But as the German economic miracle took hold, people wanted real cars, not unstable three-wheelers. The goalie became a symbol of the lean years. Looking at one today with its single front wheel tucked under a narrow nose and its wide cargo bed, it looks precarious. It serves as a reminder of how simple a vehicle can be and still be considered a truck. It is minimalism taken to the extreme, a shaft-driven relic of a desperate time. Let's head back to Japan to meet a truck that is as adorable as it is functional, the Daihatsu Midget. Specifically, the early DK models launched in 1957. If you have ever seen a movie set in 1950s Tokyo, you have seen these zipping around. The Midget was designed to fit into a specific tax class that made it accessible to practically everyone. It is tiny, so small that a large American driver might actually struggle to fit inside. We are talking about a total weight of just over 1,000 LEBs and a payload capacity of around 600 to 800 LEBs. It was the definition of light duty. The most shocking feature of the early DKA version was the steering. It didn't have a steering wheel, it had motorcycle handlebars. The cabin was essentially a glass and steel bubble built around a scooter. It had one headlight in the center on the earliest drafts, later moving to two bug eyes, giving it the look of a startled frog. Power came from a tiny 15 cubic inch 250C two-stroke engine. It wasn't fast, topping out at about 40 mph, and it certainly wasn't safe by modern standards, but it was exactly what Japan needed to bridge the gap between bicycles and full-size trucks. The Daihatsu Midget became a cult icon representing the democratization of logistics. You didn't need a commercial license or a lot of money to own one. It is the spiritual ancestor of the modern K-truck, but with way more character. The charm of the Midget lies in its honesty. It doesn't pretend to be tough, it pretends to be helpful. Driving one today is a terrifyingly fun experience. You are inches from the ground, surrounded by thin metal, buzzing along like an angry hornet. It is impossible not to smile when you see one, proving that good things really do come in small packages. When you think of Jeep, you think of the Wrangler or the old CJ models. But in the late 1950s, Jeep decided to get weird with the Forward Control series, and the FC-150 is the strangest of the bunch. The idea was to maximize cargo space on a short chassis. So they took the frame of a standard CJ5 Jeep and placed the cab famously on top of the engine, right at the very front. The result is a truck with a wheelbase of just 81 inches that is shorter than a modern Honda Civic, yet it carried a full-sized pickup bed. The proportions of the FC-150 are mind-boggling. It looks like a pug dog, flat-faced, top-heavy, and ready to fight. This design gave it incredible off-road maneuverability because there was virtually no front overhang. You could approach a vertical rock wall and your tires would hit it before the bumper did. However, this design came with a terrifying drawback. Because all the weight was in the front, if you braked hard while going down a steep hill with an empty bed, the rear wheels could actually lift off the ground. The truck was known to do stoppies, which is not what you want in a utility vehicle. Despite the scary handling quirks, the FC-150 is a marvel of packaging. Jeep even had to add a heavy cast-iron weight to the rear bumper just to keep the back wheels on the ground. The view from the driver's seat is commanding. You see nothing but the road directly beneath your feet. It is a masterpiece of industrial design by Brooks Stevens, distinct from anything else on the American road. Today, the Jeep FC-150 is a collector's dream, a rugged, quirky 404 that proves Jeep wasn't afraid to think outside the box, even if the result was a little tipsy. If you have ever been to a vintage food truck festival, you have probably seen a Citroën Type H. But don't let its modern hipster popularity fool you. This is a serious piece of industrial history dating back to 1947. The first thing you notice is the skin. The entire body is made of corrugated steel panels, looking exactly like the Junkers airplanes of W. Poo. This wasn't for style. The ridges added immense strength to the thin metal sheets without adding extra weight. It was cheap, strong, and ugly beautiful, staying in production for 34 years with minimal changes. The Type H was revolutionary beneath the skin. It featured a unitary body with no separate frame, four-wheel independent suspension, and most importantly, front-wheel drive. This meant the floor in the back was completely flat and incredibly low to the ground, just 13 inches high. You could walk in and out without climbing, standing fully upright inside thanks to the 6-foot ceiling height in many models. It was a rolling box of maximum efficiency. The pig-nose front end, with the engine protruding forward into the cabin, gave it a distinctive silhouette that became a French icon. Driving a Type H is a physical workout. The steering is heavy, the gearbox is tricky, and the engine, usually a 116 cubic inch 1.9L gas unit, is loud. Top speed is theoretically 60 mph, but you would need a lot of courage and earplugs to sustain it. Yet it is virtually indestructible. It was the van of the French police, the post office, and the local baker. It is a vehicle that prioritizes function over form so heavily that it actually circles back to being a work of art. The tube, as it is affectionately called, is weird, corrugated, and utterly unmistakable. For many Americans growing up in the mid-20th century, the sound of the Divco was the sound of mourning. Divco, Detroit Industrial Vehicle Company, built trucks specifically for one purpose: multi-stop delivery. They are most famous as milk trucks. The design is iconic: a rounded snub-nosed hood and a smooth, almost Art Deco body. But the weirdest feature of the Divco was how you drove it. These trucks were designed for extreme efficiency, allowing the driver to operate the vehicle while standing up. Yes, standing up. They featured a complex control system that allowed the milkmen to drive from a standing position using a throttle and brake mounted on the steering column or floor. This meant they could hop in, drive to the next house, and hop out without constantly sitting down and getting up, saving time and energy over hundreds of stops. The doors were bifold or sliding, allowing them to stay open while driving. The standard engine was typically a Hercules or Continental 4-cylinder, geared incredibly low. Top speed was irrelevant. These trucks lived their lives at 15 to 20 mph. The Divco represents a hyper-specialized era of automotive design. It didn't care about highway travel. It cared about stop-and-go efficiency. They were ubiquitous in American suburbs for decades, delivering milk, bread, and laundry. Today, their unique shape makes them popular as hot rods and promotional vehicles, but seeing one restored to its original specification highlights just how specialized it was. It's a truck that asks the question, why sit down when you have work to do? It is a fascinating slice of Americana that has largely disappeared along with the milkman himself. We end our list with perhaps the most capable and most hated vehicle in U.S. military history, the M561, better known as the Gamma Goat. Developed for the Vietnam War, the military needed a truck that could go anywhere, and they meant anywhere. The solution was a 6-wheel drive, 6C6 vehicle with an articulated joint in the middle. The cab and the trailer were permanently connected, but they could twist independently, allowing the wheels to stay on the ground over the roughest terrain imaginable. It looks like two vehicles smashed together, but it is one continuous machine. The Goat name was well-earned because it could climb over rocks and wade through mud that would stop a Jeep dead. But here is the crazy part. It was fully amphibious. It had an aluminum body and could float, propelled in the water by its wheels at a speed of roughly 2 to 3 mph. On land, it could hit 55 mph, powered by a Detroit diesel 3 to 53 two-stroke engine. This engine was the source of much hatred. It was located right behind the driver's head and was so deafeningly loud that drivers had to wear hearing protection just to operate it without suffering permanent hearing loss. The steering was also bizarre. It featured 4-wheel steering where the front and rear axles turned in opposite directions, making it handle strangely on pavement. It was complex, noisy, and required constant maintenance. The soldiers hated it because it was uncomfortable. The mechanics hated it because it was hard to fix. But in terms of pure weird engineering, it is a masterpiece, an articulated, swimming, six-wheeled, screaming banshee of a truck. There has never been anything like the Gamma Goat before or since, cementing its place as the weirdest military truck ever made. We have seen some truly crazy things today. From the wobbly three-wheelers of Japan to the swimming military goats of America, these 10 trucks prove that automotive history is anything but boring. It was a time when engineers took risks and built machines that prioritized function over form in the weirdest ways possible. Which one was your favorite? Did you love the futuristic Colani or the standing drive Divco? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into mechanical history. Thanks for watching.